Alright, I hope all you sexy people are doing well. Be honest, does anyone else feel like the heavyweight division has gone a bit stagnant? For generations, the heavyweight division has been the glamour division, and long may that continue. It's where the money is, and it's still where the majority of casual fans tune in. But as 2025 has come to an end, looking back, honestly, the marquee division hasn't exactly been firing on all cylinders. And today, I want to break down why that is, compare 2024 to 2025, and talk about what's next for the heavyweight division. Because when you line up the years side by side, the difference is pretty stark. Before we continue, if you like boxing, then you're in the right place. Make sure you subscribe and I'll try to keep you updated. Nice one. Cheers. And before we get into opinions, let's have a look at the facts. These were the heavyweight fights that closed out 2025. Akoli vs Uncle Tete, Pulev vs Gassiev. Not really good fights, both were cherry picks, with the latter resulting in a huge KO and a cherry pick gone wrong moment. And that leads to the next question. If these fights took place in mid to late 2010s, would we have complained? Anyways, let's get into comparing. Let's start with 2025 and I'll run through the key bouts.
I'm too old for this shit.
Derek Chisora vs Otto Wallin, Parker vs Bakoli, Kabayel vs Zhang, Hrgovic vs Joyce, Uncle Tete vs Fraser Clark, Allen vs Fisher 2, Wardley vs Hooney, Wilder vs Herndon, Usyk vs Dubois, Ituma vs White, Hrgovic vs Adelaide, Makhmudov vs Allen, Parker vs Wardley, Clark vs Jamie TKV, like I mentioned earlier, Pulev vs Gassiev, Akoli vs Uncle Tete. Now, when you look at that list, there's activity and plenty of it. But activity doesn't always equal importance. If we're talking truly major bouts in 2025, it's slim pickings. For me, the standout fights were Usyk vs Dubois, Wardley vs Parker, Kabayel vs Zhang. Now let's compare this to 2024. AJ vs Ngannou, Zhang vs Parker, White vs Hammer, Wardley vs Clark 1, Usyk vs Fury 1, Zhang vs Wilder, Dubois vs Hrgovic, Chisora vs Joyce, Ruiz vs Miller, Anderson vs Bakoli, Kabayel vs Sanchez, AJ vs Dubois, Wardley vs Clark 2, Usyk vs Fury 2, Ituma vs McKean. This wasn't just a good year, this was an elite heavyweight year. We got undisputed championship fights, career-defining performances, top 10 heavyweights actually fighting each other. Honestly, 2024 clears 2025 by a mile. Too many key fights to choose from, but I'd have to give it to Usyk vs Fury 1, AJ vs Dubois, and Usyk vs Fury 2. If we're handing out awards for heavyweight of the year, then 2024 it has to go to Alexander Usyk. Undisputed, beat Tyson Fury twice, silenced the doubters, and reaffirmed skills still beat size. Heavyweight of the year for 2025, this one's more interesting. For me, it has to go to Fabio Wardley. Most active heavyweight in the top 10, fought Joseph Parker, who was on a career best run and picked up a world champion. Battled in two amazing fight of the year contenders, kept his momentum going whilst others stalled. In a quiet year, Fabio Wardley stood out by actually fighting. So why has 2025 felt so flat? The most obvious reason is money. Boxing is a short-term career, so get your money in and get out. But fighters have absolutely been spoiled by the Riyadh season purses. I don't begrudge them, but once fighters start earning that kind of money, it's very hard to go backwards. Why take a risky fight for half the money, similar danger, and less exposure? This has resulted in fighters waiting for the call from the Saudis. This brings us on to reason 2. We have seen the Saudis scale back spending according to multiple sources. Turki Al-Sheikh, undeniably the most influential man in boxing, has been very clear on multiple occasions that he's not interested in certain fights. And one of the biggest examples is Joseph Parker versus Alexander Usyk. Despite it making sense competitively and for the rankings, Turki Al-Sheikh has openly stated that it does not excite him. And when the main money man isn't interested, the fights simply don't happen. Saudi Arabia is not completely pulling out of boxing, but they are being far more selective. And when the biggest backer in the sport starts saying no, fighters who were holding out for Riyadh season level purses suddenly find themselves stuck. Not willing to take risky fights for less money, not wanting to move back financially. So instead of fighting, they wait. And that's another reason why the heavyweight division has felt so frozen throughout 2025. Also, we as fans have been spoilt too. Over the last couple of years, we've been conditioned to expect top 10 fighters versus top 10 fighters, champions versus champions, big names actually taking risks. A lot of fans don't remember a time when the heavyweight division was given absolute rubbish on a regular basis. Back when fighters avoided each other, protected records, and we were sold fights that nobody actually wanted. Fights like Fury vs Chisora 3, Wilder vs Brazil, and Wilder vs Ortiz 2. At the time, those fights were marketed as big events, but in reality, they were safe, predictable, and low risk. And now that the money is tightening and selectivity has kicked in, both fighters and fans are feeling the come down. So are we just returning back to normal form? Most likely. Just to clarify, I'm not saying fighters shouldn't fight each other, especially when it makes sense. So that's why I think 2025 has felt so slow for the heavyweight division. The incentive structure has changed. The big money came early, the expectations went up, and when reality returned, activity dropped. Looking ahead, 2026 could be massive, and it may be the final chapter of this heavyweight era. We're likely nearing the end for Alexander Usyk, Anthony Joshua, and Tyson Fury. And of course, Tyson Fury has had more retirements than Floyd Mayweather and Michael Jordan, so who knows when it comes to him. But as I do believe this is the last run for that final generation of heavyweights, they need to make this run count. So let me know what you guys think. Has the heavyweight division gone stagnant? Was 2024 an all-time great year? And what fights do you actually want to see next? For me, the next fight I want to see is Usyk versus Caballero. Let me know what you guys think. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe as it helps the channel grow. I'll catch you on the next one.